Dengan izin Puan Koroner, kes dipanggil semula untuk sambung inkuiri 65A103/2020, Nora and Quoirin.
Yes, Puan Atika. Boleh teruskan. Puan Atika?
Unmute.
Okay, alright.
Dengan izin Puan, pihak-pihak yang sama seperti tadi Puan, pihak pendakwa raya tidak ada soalan buat masa ini untuk Cik Reeves. Puan untuk teruskan dengan Cik Ali Benjamin. Puan.
Okay,
Dan
kita invite Mr. Reeves to join us and to take the oath again. Yes, correct. Okay, Aisyah, over you untuk oath.
Hello, good morning, Mr. Reeves. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Can you just, read your oath again for today?
Yes.
You may proceed now.
I'm sorry. I'm just finding it on my screen. Right. I, Michael Reeves, do solemnly.
Sorry to interrupt. You have to raise your hand.
I, Michael Reeves, do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence which I shall give in this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we have this proceeding. I mean, the testimony given by Mr. Reeves is continued today because of the some of the documents that we are expecting from Mr. Reeves. So I believe that Mr. Saktivel will start with the Q&A session. Okay, over you, Mr. Saktivel, or Ms. Rees.
Thank you, Puan. Hi, Mr. Michael. Good morning.
Hello. Good morning.
Can we have document 327, chronological order 327 to 33? We go one by one, then I'll let him introduce and then mark it. And then thereafter parties may have questions.
Okay.
Mr. Michael?
Yes.
Can you go through this document and then tell us the nature of this document, or rather report the nature of this document?
Now, each year, the Education, Health and Care Plan has to be reviewed by the local authority for two purposes. The first purpose is to ensure that the provision that's being made for the child remains appropriate. And the second purpose is to monitor progress against objectives that have been set the year before. This review document is from the London Borough of Lambeth. Nora did not live in the same borough as the school. She came from a neighbouring borough, and therefore the neighbouring borough provides this paperwork.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about this document. We mark it as enclosure number 327.
Yes. Okay. Well, if can we go down the document a little?
Okay, Amirul.
Right, the first part here is to establish how schooling is being adapted to cope with Nora's disabilities. So we break our curriculum down into small achievable steps. The students do not move in the curriculum at the same speed as other students, so our learning is broken down into smaller sections. We also have a support assistant in the lesson there are 12 students with a teacher and a support assistant. Assessment is carried out throughout the year. In most mainstream schools, assessment would happen periodically. We carry out assessment all the time throughout lessons to measure progress. And we also aim to deliver different kinds of learning to make sure that all of the students have their different needs met. So for example, some students will need more listening, some will need more visual learning, and others will need more kinesthetic or hands-on learning. So we differentiate our teaching across a range of disabilities in the class. Okay, can you move down a little, please? Right, we now look at, as I said earlier, we now look at the objectives which have been set in the previous review meeting and in the Education, Health and Care Plan, and we measure progress against those objectives. The objectives and the progress against them are listed in the Tutor Progress Report, which is a separate document. Carry on, please. Okay, now these levels, the system for measuring academic levels has changed in the last few years across the United Kingdom. These levels, for example, level 2C for English means that Nora was just starting level 2. This places her at approximately the 6-year-old level. And in other subjects such as ICT, art, PE and food technology at the bottom where you have 1B, 1A, 1C, 1C, those are levels below a 6-year level. This was when Nora was 11 years of age. Thank you. We then always ask the views of the parents about what they consider to be their child's progress. And the next part was written down during the interview, I believe, by the person who chaired the interview, the meeting, the review meeting. And the message here from parents, the first message is that Nora is happier at our school than she had been before. And the reason for this, I believe, is the very common reason that our students have been struggling to keep up with their peers in mainstream primary schools. When they come to us, they are able to do their own work independently at their own pace because the work is provided at a more appropriate level. They need, at Garrett Park School, less support than they would have had in primary school because the work is at the right level for them. As a result of that, because Nora's being taught at a slower pace, her handwriting is much neater because she's not under pressure. She's more confident at having a go at the work because she feels more confident that she's going to be able to do it. We've also, as you'll see here, covered rather different sorts of subject content from what may have been taught in a mainstream school. So, for example, I wouldn't expect in a mainstream school for students to be taught why you need money. That's the sort of thing we do here. And also, she's more aware of some of the most basic concepts, why you need friends. She's become more socially aware. Again, those are areas which she wouldn't have developed in the same way in a mainstream school. Thank you. Nora has started to attend after-school clubs. She has made progress in bike club. Now, just to be clear on this, Nora, throughout her time in the school, as far as year 10, just before her final, during her final year with us, she remained in the bike club, but she did need a considerable amount of support in doing that, and was mostly riding cycles on school premises, not very often on the roads. Thank you. Parents declare themselves they're happy with the school. Sorry, this is Nora's views. What are the pupils' views? Nora feels that she is getting on very well at school. She's very happy with. She feels she doesn't need additional help, any more help than she's getting at the moment. And she says there's nothing that she doesn't like about Garrett Park. The next report, the next section, section 11, details other agencies which are involved in providing for Nora. The other reports are separate to this report. The reports include a report from the hearing impaired teacher who visits from the hearing impaired centre in Wandsworth, speech and language therapist, the personal additional literacy support worker who is in school, and our own in-school occupational therapist. It's then important to determine whether there have been any significant changes in the pupil's circumstances, particularly at home. We do have a lot of students here who are taken into local authority care. There were no such changes in Nora's circumstances. The next part, again, the targets for the following year are detailed in a separate report. And finally, part C, the key thing here is that part of the purpose of the review, as I said earlier, is to ensure that the provision that's being made for our students remains accurate, and the provision itself is reviewed each year. It was determined that the provision we were making for Nora with hearing impaired service, speech and language, occupational therapy, and the additional literacy support remained appropriate. And the provision, that's to say, the placement at Garrett Park School, was also deemed to remain appropriate. Many of our students are unable to travel into school independently. That included Nora. Nora came to school by taxi, and we haven't marked that, but Nora's transport into school continued until her last term here. There is no travel plan in operation. The travel plan is an action plan that seeks to make students independent in travelling to and from school by themselves. We decided that that was not appropriate at this point. Thank you. We don't need a transition plan because that only applies in year 9 and above. We have transition plans when a child transfers from year 9 into year 10, because that's when examination courses begin. And also then at the end of year 11, before they enter post-16 education. There's no need for such a plan at this point. And then section 18, the statement remains appropriate. It was a statement then. EHCPs have superseded statements since they are broadly the same document. There were no recommended changes. There were no recommended changes to provision. There wasn't a recommendation for a change of placement or for a reassessment of Nora's needs. And it was felt that the local authority, that's to say the London Borough of Lambeth, should continue to maintain the statement. The second document is what we refer to as a personal growth target plan. And the purpose of this is to provide smaller steps. We have the EHCP, the statement at this point in time, with year-long targets or longer targets. These targets are termly targets, and we aim to use these targets to build up towards the larger objective. So this particular target for the autumn term 2015, this is Nora's first term at Garrett Park, was to work with a partner in lessons. Nora was not confident about working with one single person to do her work when she arrived here, and our aim was that at the end of the first term she would be able to start doing that. And that was going to be achieved by giving Nora verbal prompts to encourage her to engage with a partner. And we weren't expecting her to do that all the time. We were expecting that to be happening 75% of the time. That was deemed at the end of that term to have been achieved. The following term's personal growth targets were very small things. The first was to say pardon instead of what when she's speaking to somebody. Again, 50% of the time, not every time. And also because of her hearing loss, we felt that Nora was missing a lot of things because she wouldn't ask people to repeat them when she didn't hear. So one of her targets there is to ask others to repeat things when she can't hear them. Right, this is the PALS report, the Personal Additional Literacy Support targets. You can see in the left-hand column the very basic level at which Nora was functioning at literacy at this point. She was still learning the basic sounds of the letters. So we wanted her to learn all of those phonic sounds. In the second column, we have what are referred to as the set 2 sounds, what are known as digraphs, in other words, 2 letters making up 1 sound, and the target was for Nora to learn those. And then eventually for Nora to read for 1 session of 30 minutes per week to reinforce her spelling and reading skills. And then for Nora to be able to recognize 50% of 3 sounds in sequence and at random by the end of term. So in other words, the teacher would pick any 3 of these sounds, point to them, and Nora would be expected to say what sound those letters made. Thank you. Okay. And this is the verbal, the written report in relation to what's above. So we can see that Nora has made some progress from 278 out of she has reached as a baseline 278 out of 299 of the tests, of the items on the phonics test that we do as a baseline at the beginning of the year. 278 out of 299 is at a low level. In other words, 299 correct would not mean that you're a fluid reader. This would mean that you were reading at a fairly basic level. And Nora hasn't quite got as far as that at the moment. Thank you. This is a speech and language therapy report. The yellow box at the top describes the ways in which speech and language therapists work at Garrett Park School. Thank you. Under the heading of background, Nora is described as a pleasant and polite student with a diagnosis of moderate learning difficulties. In other words, she would, across the curriculum, be between 2 and 4 years behind a student in a mainstream school. She would have what's described as significant difficulties. Generally, we describe difficulties as above average, average, low average, or low, and Nora would have been in the low section. The next section, speech and language therapy intervention, describes again the methods that teachers have used, therapists have used with Nora to help her to make progress. They've worked with her teachers. They have done some assessment with her on a one-to-one basis. They have given a weekly lesson, and they've also given speech and language therapy to Nora with her and one other student at the time to encourage peer communication. And then the speech and language therapists recommend and comment upon the outcomes. The outcomes is another word for objectives, the objectives that were put into the statement and also later when it changed into the Education, Health and Care Plan. Thank you. So one of the difficult things that many of our students find is moving from one room to another, particularly those of our students like Nora, who found she had a lack of confidence in moving around the school. All of our students are collected by the therapist from the classroom and taken to the therapy office. We don't send students to the therapy office by themselves. Nora transitioned well from the classroom to the therapy office, was happy to attend. She answered all the conversational questions. She can be rather fidgety and appears to be inattentive, it says. She had a very pleasant nature and was happy to joke and use humour. She did need reminders to stay on task because her concentration was quite poor, and she liked playing with items with her fingers. She was quite fidgety. She was able to refocus when prompted. She found it difficult to retain information, which Nora's short-term and working memory was not as good as a child in mainstream school. But she was able, again, when assisted, to retain and use a target word in her own sentences. She'd be given a word and would be able to use that word in a sentence. Although at that point, she did find retaining that information quite difficult. She has difficulty using complex grammar, and she's also found it very difficult, as many of our students with speech and language difficulties do, to make connections between different words. The test she was given is aimed at children aged from 5 to 9. She did well on that subtest, scoring 25 out of 32. Again, you would expect a 9-year-old, an average 9-year-old, to get 32 correct in that test. Nora got 25 at the age of 11. The therapists have therefore decided that Nora should have, rather than just relying on the in-class support of the therapist, Nora should continue to have one-to-one or paired work with a therapist out of class. And then the therapist gives advice to classroom teachers about what Nora should be given to do, and the ways in which she should be provided for in lessons. So ensure you have Nora's attention, break down instructions so that you're not giving too much information at once, break down new learning into small chunks of information, and specifically teach theme-related vocabulary. So the words connected with science, connected with history, connected with religion, she would need to be taught much more explicitly than a child in a mainstream school. Thank you. And then the therapist is recommending that in class, teachers should be encouraging Nora to develop her higher level thinking skills. The higher level questioning skills in particular, they're referred to as blanks level 4. And the question, what could happen next, is the most advanced form of questioning that children develop when they're in school. And that level of questioning starts to happen at about the age of 5, predicting, inferring, and also imagining things like characters' feelings, and understanding what a writer is getting at without direct language. And also developing basic language concept, prepositions on, under, behind, next to, right and left, before and after, ordinal, in other words, smaller or larger, pronouns, and sentence structure. This is the risk assessment which all of our students have. We didn't feel that we cover a broad range of risks. So, for example, some of our students self-harm, some are very obsessional and find it difficult to adjust to new circumstances. We have some children who bully, and then further down we have some children with a degree of verbal or physical aggression, very few, but we have some. And at the extreme end, we may possibly have a student who would bring in fireworks, knives, or other offensive weapons. That is very, very rare here. Nevertheless, we still need to put it down as a risk just in case. As you can see, Nora was deemed not to be a risk in any of those areas. The most significant risk that we have here is that Nora had difficulties with her coordination or motor skills. And as I said last time I gave evidence, this would include an inability to run, poor balance, and the likelihood, if she did try to run or walk too quickly, that she would fall and hurt herself. When traveling, we determined that there was no risk of Nora wandering off, running away, or hiding. And that would be for school trips out into London to go to museums and so on. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Reef. Excuse me, Mr. Reef. Mr. Reef, could you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Yes,
I can.
All right. I'm interested your further explanation about the student risk assessment. Okay, as the page appears. All right, the student risk assessment.
Yes.
All right. So this assessment is made in 2015, right?
That's right, yes.
Okay, that is about a month after Nora enrolled to the school.
Yes.
All right. So my question is about the when traveling. Could you please explain a little bit more about this assessment when traveling? What do you, how do you assess Nora with this kind of when wandering off or running away, hiding? So if you may explain to us.
Right. A number of people would contribute to this risk assessment. Firstly, the tutor would draft the risk assessment, having observed the child since she arrived in the school. Secondly, the chairperson, the person who chaired the annual review, would also look at it and decide whether they considered that there were any risks that needed to be accounted for. And finally, the risk assessment would be discussed with parents during the course of the review meeting. Parents always attend the annual review meeting.
So as far as the school teacher is concerned, so she or he will observe Nora at the time she went to school until
Yes,
she's
that's
safely in the classroom.
Well, in the classroom and around the school environment, and also if we had taken her out of school at all, she would have been observed there. And in addition, the parents would have contributed their perspective of any risks that Nora was subject to outside of school and at home and so on. So that we have as full a picture as we can get at that first review meeting. It is better to have a report of some sort as early as we can. The risk assessment is then updated every year or more frequently when necessary to make sure that any new risks that developed are also incorporated into the assessment.
Okay, from your own and personal knowledge, Mr. Reef, in 2015, in particular in October 2015, you said just now that Nora went to school by taxi.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know personally whether she was alone in the taxi or she was with somebody in the taxi to the school? Personally, your personal knowledge.
Right, yeah. There would be, the taxi would be the same driver every day, and the driver would be disclosure and barring service cleared and background checked. There would also be an escort in the taxi. We don't put our students in a different taxi every day with people they don't know. It's always the same taxi with the same driver and the same escort.
So the taxi driver and the taxi was arranged by the family, right?
No,
by the school.
No, when our students are unable to travel independently, either a taxi, in Nora's case, because she lived in another authority and there were very few children coming to school from that authority, or in the case of students more locally in our own authority, would be given a bus place on a separate school minibus to come to school. And all of that would be arranged and funded by the local authority.
Oh, I see. So as far as Nora is concerned, when she arrived at school, how she was led to the classroom?
The escort would bring Nora to the school gate, and then there would be a member of staff at the school gate who would then take her into the playground, and Nora usually stood very close to a member of staff who was on supervising duty in the playground. And then at 10 to 9, when the bell goes, our students make their own way into class.
Okay, understand. Thank you very much. You may continue.
Okay. Okay, thank you. On the second page, sorry, at the bottom of that risk assessment, we deemed that in school, Nora was a low risk, and similarly traveling, she was a low risk. That meant that taken in total, when traveling with her small group, with sufficient adults and with the right level of supervision, we were prepared to take Nora on school trips. The document has been signed by Rosabelle Ng, who was at this time Nora's tutor, and also by Julie Weekly, assistant head teacher, who chaired the annual review. Thank you. On the second page, where we determine that a child is a significant risk, we decide upon recommended controls that all members of staff must use when teaching the child and also when taking them out of school. We decided that no such control measures were necessary in Nora's case. Thank you. Right, and this is an occupational therapy report. Again, occupational therapy reports, like the speech and language report and the PALS report, were done annually, and the hearing impaired service report are all done annually in preparation for the annual review. The first part of this is standard. It's the same as we saw in previous reports. The speech and language therapist carried out some assessments, and again, we see, as with the report that we discussed last time, we see that Nora, in carrying out flexor and extensor postural mechanisms, helping to stabilize the body when sitting, standing and moving, Nora was observed when doing those exercises to become tired within 10 seconds, as opposed to a child of her age, a typical child of her age, being able to do that for 30 seconds. She has difficulty with bilateral integration skills. In other words, using, for example, both hands on a task at the same time and both sides of the body working together. Her body awareness is poor, and Nora relied heavily on her vision to complete tasks. Motor planning, the ability to think about, organize and complete an activity, and this is on a second by second basis. If you're going to pick something up, your brain has to tell you exactly how you're going to do that. Nora's motor planning skills in advance of picking something up, for example, were not fully developed. Okay, thank you. So when it says she overplans activities, it means that she thought she had to think much longer than most people before carrying out a physical action. Right, we now have developmental tests of visual motor integration, hand-eye coordination, it's often called. So if we go down to the bottom of this table, we see that there are the percentile band for her abilities in visual motor integration, visual perception and motor coordination are very, very weak in relation to other children of her age. So looking at this, 996 children in every 1,000, for example, would have more advanced visual motor integration. 994 children would have better visual perception, 996 would have better motor coordination, which places Nora at a very low level indeed. Thank you. Right, and the report continues. Because Nora has poor core muscles, she tends to use excessive upper body movements and strength to hold the pen. She found it very difficult to sit still, hold a posture, and control the pen or pencil just with the hand. She was tending to use a pencil and pen with her whole upper body, which makes her handwriting very difficult to read. She had difficulty, as we saw in the other report last time, walking heel to toe along a balance beam. And she also tired very quickly during gross motor activities, such as jumping and the postural activities. So as a result of that, the occupational therapist recommended that occupational therapy be continued to be provided on the Education, Health and Care Plan. It was in this first year that Nora was with us that her statement of special educational needs was converted into the newer system of the Education, Health and Care Plan. Thank you. Right, there are two sets of reports which are carried out for the annual review by people who work with Nora on a daily basis. The first was the Tutor Report. So we have at the top of that Tutor Report, as you can see, a number of objectives that we wanted Nora to move towards. Some of those would have been short-term objectives to be completed by the end of the first year. Others would have been longer-term objectives. Often our objectives are completed over 2 years or even 3 years. So really the objectives, as you can see, are very closely related to all the special educational needs and disabilities that we've seen before. Attention, listening, confidence, motivation, her understanding and use of language, social interaction, literacy, numeracy, her motor skills, self-help skills, her ability to develop her independence, maximize her hearing, and as you know, eventually, not at this point, but later, Nora had a hearing aid in one ear, and also maximize her life skills. Thank you. And the tutor goes through this, and because in year 7, the tutor teaches the bulk of the class's lessons, the tutor would teach about 40% of the child's timetable. The tutor is the person that knows the child best. So the reports here are quite positive. So she is now focusing on her work better. She is now developing some new skills. She has been able to explore how behaviours might impact on how someone else feels. She has developed confidence in initiating conversations and playing with her peers. She has developed her literacy, her numeracy. She has continued to practice her specialised handwriting exercises daily. She's been going to PE lessons. She has managed to get herself changed, ready for PE lessons. And Nora has started to tell people when she can't hear something. Thank you. And finally, sorry, there's one, just item 10 above. Can we just go back right there to item 10? She is making good contributions to lessons, and she demonstrates an awareness of developing independent skills when using public transport on school trips. Now, that looks as though Nora is making good progress, but every time I refer to progress means in relation to where she started. She is progressing from the 5, 6, 7-year-old level. She's also progressing at a speed which is well below the speed that you'd expect a child in a mainstream school to progress. She's not catching up. Garrett Park School does not expect students to catch up with mainstream peers. The idea is to give the students as much independence and as many life skills as we possibly can. So the progress we talk about is towards basic skills, not towards average performance. Thank you. Right, academic performance. We have, this is really a commentary on the levels at the very beginning of the report. Most of the comments here support, well, they're drawn from the data that I gave about her making expected progress across the curriculum. However, as I've said before, that's expected progress from her starting point and given her special educational needs and disabilities. It's satisfactory progress in relation to other similar children, not in relation to the average. She's improved her communication skills. She goes outside at break. She uses our maths garden, which is a small, quiet facility where students can go out at lunchtime and play games. And she's also, under the heading of attitude to work and lessons, she started, because now she's able to do the work that she's being given without support, because the work is at that lower level. Her attitude towards work has improved, and she's being able to complete that work more independently. Thank you. I can't, I'm afraid, read that. Right, the last little bit, if we just go back again, thank you there. We do a number of different examination courses at the end of our year 11. So this is 4 years before, nearly 5 years before Nora would have taken examinations. We were expecting at this point that Nora would not have been able to take GCSEs. GCSEs would have been at too high a level for her. We would have expected her to take entry-level certificate, ELC. Now, entry-level certificate covers the lower levels of our national curriculum below GCSE. The top entry level is entry level 3. That would show equivalent functioning in English or maths of a child aged approximately 8 or 9. So overall, we were expecting Nora in English to make progress from the level of a 5, 6 or 7-year-old when she arrived with us at age 11 to leave us with the English functional levels of approximately a 9-year-old by the time she left. So yes, there's been progress, but it hasn't been about catching up. Thank you. There were no off-site links because Nora didn't do off-site links, didn't go to college, didn't do work experience at that age. Thank you. The next report is the subject teacher report. Each of Nora's subject teachers would make a brief report. This really is the detail that was also provided in the tutor report. So again, we see expected progress throughout the curriculum. Thank you. Yes, the same again. Yeah. We have a hearing support teacher, a teacher for hearing impaired, who comes into the school from outside. This is a Wandsworth employee who visits all schools and monitors the progress of students with hearing impairments. So she describes the right-sided unilateral sensory neural hearing loss. And she has particular difficulty with high frequency sounds such as the sound F, S, and F. Those are the sounds that Nora finds difficult to hear, and that results in her having difficulties with speech discrimination. She had hospital appointments for her hearing. And at that point, it was decided that Nora didn't require a hearing aid. As you'll remember, we wanted her for one of her personal growth targets to ask people to repeat things if she didn't hear them. Again, we have a reference here to fatigue during testing. The KELF test mentioned under observation is a test which stands for the Common Examination of Language Fundamentals, which looks at things like word categorization and so on, putting things in sentences, sentence recall. Nora found that very difficult to access that test, although she did carry out other tests. Thank you. And yes, here are the test results. So she did quite well on those test results with a low background noise level. Background noise, when background noise increases, speech discrimination gets more difficult. Okay. And similarly, with slightly higher background noise level, Nora was still able to hear quite well. But that would be there would be situations where background noise would be higher than that. So at this point, with the hearing levels at this point, it was decided not to pursue the option of fitting a hearing aid. Parents had no concerns about Nora's hearing. Nora felt that her hearing is very good. We have a lot of students who feel their hearing is very good when actually it isn't. So Nora, I think, overestimated how good her hearing was, and certainly later on, she was quite willing to take a hearing aid. Right, so the recommendations at the bottom there, these are recommendations for staff in the classroom. So she needs people to be sitting on her left side if she appears to be struggling to hear. Need to reduce background noise, ensure there's good lighting to help the lip reading, and also call Nora's name before asking her a question to ensure that she is ready to hear. Hearing impaired service did not have a huge level of involvement with Nora. It was annual monitoring. Thank you.
Puan, that's all the report. Pohon untuk ditandakan, Puan, sebagai exhibit.
Enclosure 3 to 7 as exhibit. 61 Okay.
Berapa, Puan?
EI 61. 61.
Thank you. Okay.
Maybe Mr. Sakti, you can lead because it involves quite a thick document, Mr. Sakti.
Yeah.
If you may lead, because our concern is we want to see the progress that undergone by Nora when she was in the school.
Would it be
Okay, so,
yeah, can I suggest then, can we tender, then I can ask him from the reports produced this week as compared to last week, and compared to over the years, is there any much progress? So in that way, he can summarize, and then if one finds it, otherwise we have to go through this every report.
yes, you can put that kind of questions, and others can necessarily interrupt it when necessary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Puan.
Okay, we go to, I don't know which. Okay, over you, apa ni, Mr. Sakti? Because for enclosure 3 to 7, which was marked as EI 61, so these reports focus on the progress about Nora in 2016.
Yes, Puan, that's correct.
Right. So now we are going to the next enclosure, which is 3 to 8. I believe this involve of reports in 2017. Yes, I think it's 2017. Okay, over you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Mr. Michael?
Yes, hello.
Hello. Can you explain to us this particular report, especially which year and for what purpose?
Okay. This is another annual review of the Education, Health and Care Plan, which would have involved all of Nora's teachers and her parents and Nora herself, and therapists would have contributed to this review.
Could you tell us the year, the date of this report, or the year of this report?
This is April 2018, so it would have been 3 school years later than the first report. At this point, Nora would have been in year 9, I beg your pardon, 2 school years later. So the first report was October 2015, and then this report, that's at the beginning of year 7. This report is towards the end of year 9.
can you summarize to us, or rather tell us in brief, the contents of this report, if you may?
Yes. Would you like me just to comment on the progress that's demonstrated in the report?
Yes, that would be great. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Right. So if we keep going, most of these areas at the top haven't changed at all because they are purely factual about Nora's background and needs. Same here. This is a further description of needs which haven't changed over the last 2.5 years. Right. Parents felt that Nora had made very visible progress since she got to Garrett Park. She has, for the first time, developed friendships and is happy and settled. She's no longer as anxious about going to school. She feels more confident about being able to do things. She's interested in the topics she's doing in school. She goes to after-school clubs, and bike club in particular has helped Nora ride a bike, which we thought would never happen. Parents are still concerned about communication in more difficult situations. She finds communication incredibly difficult, and this has led to arguments with her siblings that she can't really handle. She still needs to make progress in knowing how to have conversations, manage and express her feelings, and solve problems, resolve issues, none of which she can do at this point by herself. She has at this point been fitted with a hearing aid, and Mr. and Mrs. Quoirin are hoping that as a result of that, Nora will become a little more independent in her communication. They are concerned here about using a telephone. Nora at this point is unable to use the telephone, but parents were hoping that could develop. Parents have said they have seen progress in her physical strength, but they can also see how much more is still required. Nora still tires easily in many areas. They still feel that handwriting is very difficult. She still has difficulties managing money, time, and managing her own needs. She doesn't understand words like yesterday. She doesn't understand concepts. And this is something that parents are hoping further progress we would make, including that parents are wanting to support at home with handling money.
Excuse me, Mr. Reeve.
Yes.
Okay, I have to interrupt you, Mr. Reeve. Okay, now all of us are referring to this report, the Educational Health and Care Plan, and it was prepared by Mr. Adam. Yeah, I don't know how to head of special educational needs.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So my question is, what the relation between this special education needs, this report, and your school, as far as annual review is concerned?
Right. That person is a member of our leadership team. She has the status of assistant head teacher. Her qualifications are in speech and language therapy. She's very expert at working in special needs. She has 40 years of experience in working with special educational needs and disabilities.
And your school will ask this particular person to prepare this kind of report, if necessary, as far as annual review is concerned.
Yes, the role of the chair is to gather together all of the reports and ensure that they're of appropriate quality and to ensure that they're accurate, and then chairs the meeting in order to gather the opinions of parents and also meets with the child to ensure that their views are taken into account.
So may I say that this report is a summary of everything?
Yes, this is a fully inclusive report, yes.
Okay, and this report is something about Nora saying the first day she joined the school until April 2018. Am I right?
Yes, there would have been another report in between the last report we looked at and this one. The advantage, I think, of looking over a 2-year period is that we get a better sense of progress that was made over a longer period. Okay, based on this report. All right, based on this report, because last Friday, you said that there was slow progress as far as Nora is concerned. Okay, based on this report prepared by Mr. Adam, can you highlight to us anything that support that your contention or your conclusion that there was slow progress? Yes. Well, I can comment firstly on what parents are saying. Progress is satisfactory in relation to other similar children. In relation to children as a whole, Nora's progress was slow. So in here, we can see that parents are happy with the progress that's been made and are finding that there are some things that Nora can do which she couldn't do before. However, they're also very clear that a great deal of further work is needed to make further progress in order for Nora to start to become more independent. At this point, Nora is still, despite the progress she's made, not able to do many things independently. So based on the statement's objective that your school or the respective authorities set for Nora, you said that, may I summarize that the school actually preparing Nora to be independently, okay, as far as basic life skills are concerned? As far as possible, yes. As I said last time, Nora was never likely to live a completely independent life. Yes, okay. We are talking about the basic life skill. That's why we can see about the learning skill, the speaking skill, the gross motor skill. Okay, that's the objective or the program that you have set, Nora. So now my question, because actually all of us do not know what actually happened to Nora. What actually happened to Nora in Malaysia? Okay, how she was outside, she was found at a different place. Okay, my question is, since September 2015 until July 2019, was there any, I don't know, what should I call it, subject or curriculum that outlined by your school that just to test how a people like Nora would react to an emergency situation? Sorry, react to any emergency situation that you may create. Is there any curriculum or any subject that taught in your school that you put people like students like Nora with a special disability in a situation, in any emergency situation, just to know, to assess to what extent this kind of people could react to that situation? We didn't do any formal training in what I would call crisis management. Crisis management. However, we obviously taught in a number of areas, including in tutor time, and also during our personal, social and health education lessons and the speech and language sessions. We did give a lot of advice to students about how to keep themselves safe. That was out on the street and also online. We did a lot of work on that. I wouldn't say that we did anything like teaching a child how to act if they suddenly found themselves outside, alone, in the dark and in danger in that situation. No.
Yes.
The reason for that is that our students frequently present with a considerable level of anxiety, and talking through those situations for many of them would be very difficult. However, broadly speaking, we did do a lot of teaching about health, social skills, and maintaining one's own safety. For example, we used the expression stranger danger, and we did a lot of work on students ensuring that they spoke to the right people at the right time and didn't put themselves at risk.
Okay, understand. Okay. Mr. Sati, I think you can,
Puan,
I don't know.
Can we already briefly explain? So, I mean, unless Puan wants to go through, otherwise I'm intending to tender this document through.
So, okay.
Unless Puan has any particular info that I would like to pinpoint, then I can go to that area and ask him to explain. Yeah.
Yes, okay. Yeah.
All right. So, okay, tadi kita just now we are referring to this educational health and care plan. Now then then we come to the the speech and language therapy,
Yes,
which is the assessment date is January 2017.
yes.
All right. So is there any different, Mr. Reef, about this report and the previous report that you referred to?
Right. This report, I think it's important to have a look at the tutor report, the tutor and subject teacher reports, which will be quite near the bottom of the document.
All right.
Yes, probably a long way down.
The title dia Amirul Garrett Park School Tutor Progress Report for Educational Health Care Plan. Way down.
Yes, keep going. I believe that I believe we discussed this particular document last time.
Yes.
We keep going.
Lagi.
Yes, same with that one. We've seen that before as well. Right, it's not far now, just a little bit further down.
Lagi.
Right, okay, so if we just, sorry, go up a little bit. Right, there we are. So we can see that 2 years later, if you look at the achieved accreditation, 2 years later, whilst Nora had made progress, she was still targeted to take the basic qualifications in entry-level English, maths and science. It's possible now that she would be taking a GCSE, a higher level in ICT computing, but she's still, and partly this is because of her motor skills difficulties, she was only at the lower level qualification for PE, food technology and art. So again, just to repeat, these are qualifications at about the 9-year-old functional level. In that sense, nothing has changed in terms of her projected accreditations since she was in year 7. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Sakti.
Puan untuk ditandakan, Puan.
Right. Yes, this is the one. Right. So we changed our assessment system between the last report and this one. We now have different. This is on government instructions. We were forced to develop our own assessment system, mainly because the government systems were attempting to move our students on far more quickly than they were able to. We have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 and phase 4. Now phase 1 is at the 7 and 8-year-old level. Phase 2 is at the 8 and 9-year-old level. And in both of those areas, you can see that in English, Nora was still really only beginning. It's beginning, exceeding, and beginning, emerging, and confident are the 3 letters at the top. So Nora is at the beginning stage in English for the year 7-8 level. In maths, she's more confident. She's competent at the year 7 level and beginning to look at the year 8-9 levels. In science, again, just beginning the year 8 in some areas and emerging in year 8 in some areas and beginning in year 8 in others, depending upon the part of the curriculum involved. Thank you. All of this again is about expected progress, but expected, as I said before, from low levels. These other subjects, Nora at this point in her career was still doing, but there were no assessment levels for those because they lie outside of our national curriculum. Again, expected progress from her low starting point. Thank you.
Mr. Rubis, how old was Nora at that time?
At this time, this was April 18, I believe. Is that correct?
April 18.
Yeah, yes, April 18. She's in year 9. So she would have been 13 at this age, at this point.
Thank you.
Okay, apa marking? Apa ni Aisyah? Lampiran 3 to 8. Okay, we mark as EI 62. Sakti.
Thank you, Puan. Can we now have enclosure 329, Puan?
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
This, yeah, sorry, just keep going down a little bit.
Can you identify what report?
Yeah, this is I believe this is the last. This is April 18. Yeah, so this is the last review that was done. No, sorry. Right. This is the last annual review that was done. There's some confusion here about the dates because
Yes.
It does say at the top that the EHCP itself is April 2018. That's because there was a long delay in getting the updated EHCP from the London Borough of Lambeth. The transitional review, when the EHCP is formally amended, was undertaken in 2017. This one is this is actually the year 10. Sorry, yes, it was taken in 2018. This is actually the review from the following year. This is from 2019.
Do you think that we are referring to the same document that we referred before, Mr. Reeve? Because
I don't see. No, I don't see that there'll be anything substantially different in this document from what was in the previous ones. Again, the story would be that Nora has made progress. But that would be progress in relation to her ability, not in relation to standards or norms of progress across her
the
age.
latest document you referred is unsigned, and if we can turn to page 16, it's clearly unsigned.
Yeah.
Okay, and the remark that final April 2018 is similar remark that we have at page 1 in Exhibit Inquest 62, Mr. Sakti. I don't know whether this document is similar document.
Perhaps the witness can.
Sorry, but if I may, I think the contents are also the same when I look at the parents' observation. So I don't think it's a step. Maybe it's an unsigned version, but from the contents, from my quick reading, it's the same.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, it could be. Because it was sent to us and then I just filed it one. It could be an unsigned version of the document. I mean, since the witness is here, we can confirm from him whether.
Mr. Rick, can you confirm if, let's say, it's the same document? May I suggest to disregard the latest one?
No, this is a. Yes, you're right. This is the same document as the one we looked at before. Yes.
Okay, we disregard enclosure 3 to 9. Maintain with enclosure 3 to 8. Then we go to about the other enclosure.
330.
Okay, Mr. Sakti. I think sama lah. I think the rest are supporting document for Exhibit 62. I'm not sure, Mr. Sakti. You have to double check. 330.
330 yes, please. 330, yes.
Yes. Right. Okay, this document, I'm not sure of the date on that. The date on this would be at the bottom, I think. Oh, year 9, I beg your pardon. Yes, year 9. Each year, students are asked to contribute to their own education, health and care plan. And there is a school comment on the top, which has been completed by Mrs. Julie Wheatley, who is assistant head teacher in charge of years 7, 8 and 9. And she's written a comment to the effect that Nora's transitioned well in year 9. She's a hard worker and a good role model to her classmates. She models good social skills and manages to ignore negative behavior. And then underneath that, Nora is asked to make comments. And normally these comments are made on paper by a teaching assistant in conversation with the student. So the writing here is not Nora's writing. This is the writing of a teaching assistant. So she's asked what she likes doing. She says she likes doing everything. She hasn't got a favorite subject. She likes reading. She feels her reading's improved. She feels that, well, anything, she says, helps her to get on better. She doesn't like her e-learning lessons. This is a computer lesson designed to improve literacy and numeracy. She says because it's boring. She needs help with food technology when I do things wrong. Two reasons for this. One is, again, the motor skills. The other, I would imagine, and it's not listed here, but I would imagine that would be to do with sequencing actions and things like managing time, which Nora was quite weak in. So she's not worried. She would like one day to work with animals, she says. Thank you.
Puan, pohon ditandakan, Puan.
AI 63.
Can we have 331, Puan? Not too sure. This is this. Mr. Michael, can you identify this document?
Yes, this is a contributing document to the annual review in April 2018. Nora's parents were invited to give their views. This hasn't, can we just go down the document? Right, this document hasn't been completed because it would have been discussed during the course of the meeting instead of filled in advance. So the views have been accounted for, but they've been taken account of in other parts of the document. These are the discussion points that would have been made during the course of the meeting. And we have the objectives, the long-term and the medium-term objectives being listed here, and they would have been discussed with parents during the course of the meeting. And you'll see that in year 9, the essential difficulties, whilst there had been progress against them, the essential difficulties remain. And again, all of the areas under please comment. We now have a comment at the bottom here. Nora is extremely happy in school, and more so now she has made a specific friendship. So she now has school friends. That's this is 2 years into her time, nearly 3 years into her time here. Parents are commenting on how she's now managed to form friendships. She's managing her new hearing aids well. Yeah, and that's it. So that was the comment at the end there was fed into the annual review, and similarly the pieces further above about the objectives would also have been discussed during the review.
So, Mr. Michael, this is a document part of the 2014 annual review. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. That review took place in April 2018 when Nora was coming to the end of year 9. That's to say, nearly 3 years after she joined the school.
All right. Puan, since it's not signed, I'm not sure whether we can mark this, but I'll leave it to Puan because it is not signed. So
no, very often we have a hard copy which is signed, but the electronic versions are not signed. Sometimes the annual review document, the new EHCP document that came from Lambeth was also not signed. The responsibility for signing that lies with the local authority in Lambeth, not with the school.
Because Mr. Reeve said that this is a supporting document for annual review.
Yes,
right?
Puan.
Okay.
Yes.
So we mark this as exhibit AI 64.
Thank you, Puan. We have enclosure 332, Puan.
Okay. So,
Mr. Michael, can you tell us what document is this?
Yes, I believe this is the speech and language therapy report from the year before the one which I discussed last Wednesday. As with all of the other speech and language reports, it begins with a description of Nora's special educational needs and disabilities. It then moves on to speech and language therapy intervention, the activities which speech and language therapists have taken with Nora. This includes weekly social communication skills lessons, which are taught by speech and language therapists to the whole class. But Nora also had paired speech and language therapy with the therapist out of class. The speech and language therapists also engage with the teaching staff for training, liaison about the individual tutor, giving recommended strategies that teachers might use for looking after students with speech and language delay and impairment. Okay. This is copied from the EHCP. So we have already seen this. Right, so part of the speech and language therapist's job is to recommend objectives that Nora would expect to have achieved over a given time scale. This one is by the end of Key Stage 3, that's to say by the end of Year 9. Key Stage 3 is Years 7, 8 and 9 together. So again, relating very closely to the special educational needs and disabilities previously described, Nora to develop an understanding of different communication strategies, how they can support peer interactions, including strategies for problem solving and repairing any breakdowns in communication. Nora to be able to identify 4 to 5 new curriculum linked words. This goes back to previous speech and language outcome recommendations relating to how Laura used subject and topic specific vocabulary. It's the same basic objective, but 2 years later. Nora to identify 5 or 6 parts of familiar stories, and that would include characters, setting, time, what happens in the story, how a problem is solved, and what happens at the end of a story. And also for Nora to put a 4-part sequence into the correct chronological order 80% of the time. So that might be telling a story. 4 things happen in the story, put them in sequence. The aim is that Nora would do that 80% of the time, not every time. Thank you.
Mr. Michael?
That report was conducted by a qualified speech and language therapist, Megan Armstrong.
Yes, it is not signed. Could you explain?
Well, I think in legal terms in the UK, a document which doesn't have a handwritten signature, which is sent by email, does have equal validity when it's got the name at the bottom and it's from the email address of the person who sent it.
Thank you.
We would not necessarily sign documents with the frequency that they're signed in other countries when they're conducted by electronically. Where things are sent in the post, like for example the EHCP that was sent from Lambeth, that should have been signed and wasn't. But most of our documentation comes through email.
Puan, pohon ditandakan Puan jika dibenarkan.
Amirul, next document.
Puan, have we marked this or?
We already marked exhibit EI 65.
Okay, thank you, Puan. Can we have the last document, Puan? Enclosure 333. Thank you, Puan.
This is the Year 9 Tutor Progress Report. Firstly, at the top, as you can see, Nora had a very high rate of attendance in school. It was always above, I believe it was always above 90% in the previous tutor progress reports. This year, 17-18 was 95%. Reading, Nora has made satisfactory progress, but as I said before, she's made 3 months of progress from 6 years and 11 months to 7 years and 2 months. 3 months is about what we target. In the case of a mainstream child, you would obviously expect there to be 12 months of progress in a calendar year. Spelling, Nora made very good progress on this in this year. Her spelling developed from 8 years in 2016 to 9 years in 2017. That does remain 4 years below her actual age. I would also point out that in the next report, in 2018, Nora's spelling had actually deteriorated again. Numeracy was 4 years and 10 months in 2016 and had increased to 6 years and 9 months. That is a very good rate of progress, more than we would have expected, but still her numeracy level is well below her spelling and reading levels, and that's because we prioritize that area. Thank you. Right, Nora has been able to contribute her ideas in a class discussion. The tutor says that she has good general knowledge. Her general knowledge would have been better than some other students, many other students in this group. And I think mainly that's because she did do quite a lot of reading, but also because I would imagine her parents would have talked to her a lot about world events at home. She's able to tell someone if she hasn't understood something, which again is a good piece of progress, but she doesn't always ask for help. She's willing to help, accept help when it's offered, but doesn't ask for it often enough. Nora can sequence familiar stories, and she's still not able to ask for thinking time, to give herself time to formulate her ideas and her responses to questions. The aim is to, another aim is to complete a learning task independently within a given time frame. She sometimes continues with a task not understanding what she's supposed to be doing. So she's not checking sufficiently at this point whether her understanding is correct. Thank you. Right, she's gradually contributing more to group activities, but she requires prompts to contribute socially, either from an adult or from one of her more socially confident peers. She doesn't like leading activities. For example, in a round the table group activity, she wouldn't want to be the spokesperson or the organizer. She likes a small social circle rather than having too many friends, and that remained the case until she left us at the end of year 10. Nora can sometimes not be able to describe how she's feeling. Again, this is a difficulty that went way back to year 7. It was something we've worked on for nearly 3 years, and she's still not consistently able to do that. She's not always managing her hearing aid well, although she does take it off before and after swimming. Thank you. Right, so again, making expected progress from her starting point in relation to other children of her level of ability. Good progress in English. Still, spelling age 7 years and 2 months, reading age 9 years and 1 month, both well below her actual age. She's on track for completing her personal growth targets. The personal growth targets I spoke about earlier were ignoring negative comments by others. And she's managed to do that by talking to herself to remind herself to ignore. So if somebody says something negative, she will actually say to herself, ignore it, and carry on with what she's doing. She's still not good at reminding herself to ask for help. She's very quiet, can be quite playful, good sense of humor. She likes to engage in slight teasing and have a laugh. Some people see her as being pushy, but that's just her sense of humor. Nora needs a waiting time when being asked a question. Okay. Nora is now taking part in basketball club on Tuesday evenings. That's a club which lasts for about 45 minutes after school on Tuesdays. Travel still being picked up by the taxi. Yes, and the concerns are the same as above, really. And these are suggestions about what colleagues, teachers might do with Nora to enhance her progress. You'll notice the last of those is that Nora is still unable to work out the right amount of change when she's paid £1 for something.
Puan, pohon ditandakan Puan jika dibenarkan.
Exhibit EI 66. Okay.
That's all Puan for me. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Alif.
Yes.
Okay, now we are waiting question from Mr. Alif.
Okay, Mr. Reeves, you've gone through all the reports and the annual reviews that you have submitted from last week as requested by court. But correct me if I'm wrong, but all throughout the documents, what I noticed is that observations has always been Nora has made progress from year to year, and nowhere does it say that Nora has made good progress in relation to where she started, or it does the progress is not in accordance with normal children of her age. Is that correct? Based on what is written on the report.
We are a special school, and we would not directly, in the course of an annual review meeting or in an annual review report, compare our students to average students.
Right.
All of our progress measures are based upon other children of similar difficulties. And whenever we refer to progress, we would say that, yes, the child is making progress. We might say the child is making better than expected progress, but that would be better than expected in her context. It wouldn't be better than expected in comparison to other students.
Correct.
In terms of her never saying she's made poor progress.
No, that's not my question. My question was that does all the reports say that Nora made progress from year to year? That was my question. It's a simple question.
Yes, correct.
And if you look at the reports as well, Nora is involved in basketball, in swimming, in bicycle club. So physically, she is quite able for a person of her ability.
She was physically one of the least able students we had. Being able to play basketball covers, as you can imagine, a huge spectrum. We have students who can bounce the ball, and and students who can throw the ball, but who can't score a basket, can't play basketball without exhaustion for more than 5 or 10 minutes. And the fact that Nora is on the basketball court doesn't make her physically able. Similarly, with our swimming program is very highly supervised. We have, at any one time, we would have 12 students in the pool for about half an hour. We would have some adults in the pool supervising and supporting. We would also have at least 4 adults around the pool side in case students got into difficulty. So much more highly supervised, much more supported than swimming would be for an average child.
But she is able to do it. That is what I'm asking. She was able to participate in swimming, basketball, bike club.
She was not a strong swimmer, and the pool that we used was only 1 meter deep.
No. Was she able to participate or not? That was my question.
She joined in with other members of her group at her level, yes.
Yeah, correct.
In terms of cycling, she started off by using a tricycle with 3 wheels, and with a high level of physical support, learned to ride short distances on a 2-wheeled bicycle not long before she left us in the end of year 10. Much later than an average child.
Hold on, just let me quickly. Yep. Okay. So, if you look at you said that she graduated to 2-wheel bikes without stabilizers in her last year. Is that what you said?
Yes, I believe at the beginning of her last year. Yes.
If we look at the first document that you referred to, I believe that's the first Lambert report that was carried out at date of annual review is 16th of March 2016. The first document that you referred to, if you look at, hold on, let me just quickly go to the page. I have it at page 9. It shows that she is able to ride a 2-wheeler without stabilizers at 2016.
Okay, I accept that.
Yeah.
What happened?
No. I just wanted to ask. So she did graduate from stabilizers to two wheels at 2016, based on the report. I'm just asking you based on the report.
Yeah, she was cycling very, very short distances, nothing like the distance that another child could do early on. Later, she was able to ride a slightly bigger bike with two wheels.
Okay, and like what I asked you last week, Mr. Reeves, your testimony is based on your reading and interpretation of these reports, correct?
My testimony has been based on my knowledge of Nora. Some of that knowledge comes out of the annual review reports, the speech and language therapy reports, occupational therapy, and so on. I would also say again that I knew Nora for 4 years, and I got to know her very well, and I saw her several times every day and spoke to her frequently.
Okay, and just a last question. You earlier mentioned that she took a cab to go from school to home.
Yes.
Do you know the reason why she was taking a taxi rather than being dropped off by her parents?
Sorry, I'm just wondering what the relevance of that question is.
I want to know because he testified earlier as to how she would go into the taxi, whether there was a guide and all. So I just want to know, does he know why?
Sorry, are you advising me to answer that question?
I have to say, Puan, I can't see really the relevance of why, why did she have to take a taxi to school as opposed to be dropped off by her parents? How does that relate to the issues to be determined in the case?
Okay, maybe we can ask Mr. if he has any personal knowledge on that decision.
Okay, I'm happy to answer the question. London is a big city with difficult transport. Both of Nora's parents have professional and demanding jobs. Just as importantly, all students in the United Kingdom with education, health and care plans who have difficult journeys, pronounced degrees of special educational needs or disabilities are legally entitled to be given transport, either in the form of a school minibus, a local authority minibus, or in the form of a taxi to get to school. And this was something that was arranged by Lambeth and funded by Lambeth in line with the Education Act 1984.
Thank you, Mr. It's clear now. That's all, no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Alif. Puan Atika, is there any additional question? Yeah, additional questions from you?
Just 1 or 2 questions for Mr. Reeves.
Okay.
Hello, Mr. Reeves.
Hello.
Mr. Reeves, all this report of an observation of Nora, it's made when Nora was at school, right?
Sorry, on which report? You mean all the perspectives, the perspectives of her abilities? Yes, they're all related to school, yes.
They are made while she was in school, right?
Yes, all whilst, of course, she was on school trips out of school.
All right.
For example, the class went on many trips out for educational purposes. The swimming sessions were also held off-site about 2 miles away in London, and we don't have our own swimming pool.
All right. Would you agree that these reports may not reflect how Nora is at home with her family?
One of the questions we always ask, both at interview at the beginning of Year 7 and also in the annual review process, is for parents to give their perspective on the way in which the provisions and the needs described in the Education, Health and Care Plan compare with experience at home. The comments that you'll have seen throughout those annual review reports from parents make it clear that their awareness of Nora's special educational needs and disabilities very closely matches the perspective of the school.
So, is there any possibility that perhaps Nora is more active or more willing to do more with her family outside of school?
No, not in terms of her ability to be independent, or in terms of her social skills, or of course in terms of her physical ability. No, parents and school shared a very similar perspective on Nora's abilities.
So in your opinion, these reports made of Nora is basically, we can say that's how Nora truly is from the perspective of school, her therapist and her parents.
Yes.
In your case.
Yes. Yes, very much so.
Okay, that's all for me, Puan Koroner. That's all my questions.
Okay, thank you, thank you very much, Puan Atika. Mr. Sakti, any else?
No, Puan, I don't have any other questions.
All right. Luis?
No, thank you.
No. Mr. Alif? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Rif. Thank you for your cooperation and your time. The witness is released and discharged. Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. You may leave the room.
Thank you.
Right.
Yep, goodbye.
Okay, goodbye to you. All right. So, well, kita tomorrow, Puan Atika, can you update us about tomorrow punya proceeding about the witness?
Puan, saya dah bagi link kepada Inspektor Nikman. Sekarang ni dia bersama dengan ASP Udaya Sorian dan mereka nak cuba tengok kalau boleh connect ke tak buat masa